Mostly, I think this is a very good thing, and it's a thing that people who are working on other issues would kill for, like would really love to have. People paying attention, feeling concerned, feeling emotional about like the things that we all care about, that we're talking about right now. So in terms of like how do we start to talk to people about it, my thought is to find the creative ways to tap into that energy. That creative tactics that bring people into the story. So not just talking at people, but making people a part of the story. I think that's really sort of a big piece of what we have to do, and certainly what we're thinking about at All Out. The second thing I think is important is not to see LGBTI rights as this kind of category of issues that sort of sits apart from all of the other things that we care about and are organizing on. I think one of the ways that we sort of get people engaged in this is we talk about how LGBTI issues intersect with all the other things that they care about. If you care about public health, if you care about any number of other legal rights, racial discrimination, all of these things have an LGBTI angle that cuts across. And I think that we often sort of say like LGBT issues, that's like marriage equality, and it's not all of these other things, but really these are the things that matter, these are the ways that people are impacted, and that's, I think, a great place to start.
I'll go next. I think this question is very difficult in a place like Uganda, where the issue of awareness raising and sensitization of LGBTI rights is criminalized. You could go to jail for 7 years. So unfortunately, those spaces for us to continue the dialogue have been reduced, but we do have to find ways to continue the dialogue. And of course, that is through social network, and to also continue to work. Like, for example, we've been trying to see whether we can meet the president of Uganda, because he also said, I've never met a gay person, I don't know how he looks like. So in his mind, he doesn't even consider gay people to be human. And if we can start with the humanness of gay people, in Uganda, because that's the problem. People don't see us as human, they see us as these animals with horns, who are very aggressive and who are very sexually motivated. Like, they see us as inhuman, basically. So we've been trying to see whether we can find ways to meet the guy. Like, this is who I am, Mr. President. Like, you've criminalized me, but this is who I am. I'm struggling like any other Ugandan. I voted for you. So if we can find ways to promote dialogue with our leaders, with our community, that would be very, very helpful, because I think the criminalization, the intolerance comes about because people just don't understand gay people. They're very afraid of them. There's such a hysteria around gay people in Uganda, which is unnecessary, but that has a lot to do with the fact that we don't have enough faces. We don't have enough faces that are visible in Uganda, and even those that are visible are criminalized. So I feel like that would be a starting point. If we had spaces for dialogue, if we could speak to our leaders and inform them that we are not after your children, we just want to hold hands with our partners, we want to have children, basically help people understand what this whole gay thing is all about. Because if we have had success in running in-house workshops within the coalition, where we go to organizations and ask people what exactly they feel about homosexuals. We would not come in as lesbian and gay people, we would come in as coalition members. And people would say all sorts of things, and would ask them whether this is because they truly believe this. Mostly they would keep saying, my pastor told me this, or the MP said this the other day. It's not necessarily what they believe, but what they're hearing most. So we're able to deconstruct these beliefs and say, I am a human being, this is how I've been discriminated, I do have a job, I'm not after your children. And this would help people to understand and conceptualize gay people in a more human way. So I feel like if we can have these spaces for dialogue that have been taken away from us, we would be able to go far in advancing LGBTI rights as human rights in Uganda.
Trian, did you want to speak to this? Or move on? Okay. So another question about how we can all use technology to advance LGBT human rights. On the co-group, we've had some success with Twitter things, and we're going to be doing a Twitter action, so get your phones ready a little bit later. But I wonder if, if Audrey could speak to technology, all-out use of technology to advance human rights, LGBT human rights, and Clare, I don't know if you wanted to give a little thought on if and how you're using technology in your fight in Uganda. Andre?
Sure. Yeah, I think that there is a lot of technology opens up new possibilities for this work, and I guess first a reflection is that one of the things that we often see is that, and I don't think this is only true on LGBT issues, I think this is true on other issues, that at this stage, the organizations who work on these issues are often lagging behind, technology-wise, their constituents. In other words, that LGBT communities are already using all of these technologies to organize. They're on Facebook, they're tweeting, they're using email and listservs, all these kinds of different things. And I think one of the things we have to make sure that we do is we're able, not just to have sort of like tactics that are kind of sparkly and fun, but that we're using technology to reach people where they are and where their broader networks are. So that's a lot of how we think about the type of technology that we want to use and that we want to build. My second thought is, I think there are a lot of creative ways that people are using technology to track emerging news and to organize in real time around events that are happening. And to me, that's the stuff that's the most exciting. And it's often not that sexy or dramatic, but for example, we launched a campaign this week with partners in Peru who are trying to pass the first civil unions law, and really the first pro-LGBT law in the history of the country. There are 5 key people on a committee who are currently saying they're going to vote no, and we're trying to kind of move them over to the right side. We launched this campaign, got some thousands of people to sign on. The group in Peru was going door to door, lobbying with each of those legislators, trying to get them to change their position. And as a result of the campaign, one of them tweeted, met with the group, changing my position from no to yes on this. Within 2 minutes, the partner that we're working with had gotten that tweet, had sent us the email for the tweet, All Out responded, the group responded, and then the legislator also responded to us within like sort of a 20-minute cycle. And for me, that kind of use of technology, that sort of like real-time understanding of events and ability to communicate and bring people into the story as it's unfolding, not weeks or months after, is really, really powerful. It's really a part of how we keep people engaged, and also how we make our targets know that we are real, that we can bring real and immediate pressure. That stuff for me is really exciting. Last thing I'll say about technology is, one of the things I'm sort of most passionate about is, we all know the tech that exists. We all know the platforms that are already out there, but I want to encourage everybody in this room to think of yourself not only as users, but as builders, to be a part of technology teams that are actually thinking about the next generation of tools that will help people organize and what those should look like. Because we need the minds of organizers, people who have done this work, who've done grassroots organizing, to be in the rooms with designers and technologists who are building the tools that are going to define how we connect with each other, speak to each other, work together in the next 5 years and 10 years. And I think there's a lot of potential there.
Technology back home, we have definitely used social network most, because if you're denied access to public spaces in your own country, you have to devise means to stay in touch with each other, checking on each other, building networks, not just in like central Uganda, but all over the country, to make sure that people are safe. So if something happens to someone in northern Uganda, we're able to know about it as security officers, and we're able to respond in ways that we wouldn't have been able to do without technology. And I think one of our biggest successes with use of technology has been the time we organized the Day of Action, where we called upon all our partners internationally and nationally to join us to speak against the bill. Unfortunately, it was passed, but either way, we were able to get such a huge response, and it was very helpful because we were able to know that people are watching us, that people are behind us, that people are in solidarity with us. That generated so much attention on the issue. And in terms of support, as much as back home we do know our phones are tapped by the government to kind of know what is happening with activists. By the way, we're regarded as terrorists back home, which is insane, but that is how people see us back home. So usually when you're making a phone call, you say, hey, but then you speak to the other person that is listening and say, don't you have many things to do? That's crazy, but we do that sometimes because we know sometimes phones are tapped. But there's the other issue of the panic button, which I know Amnesty International is working on, which is an app that would potentially help human rights defenders who go out to protest, who go out in problem areas to be able to communicate to networks within the networks you have for security purposes and emergency response. So I would encourage support on that. Hopefully, we can have more, smartphones in Uganda than feature phones, because that would be a problem with such an app, because you do need a smartphone to be able to use it. But these are some of the technological developments that are very helpful for human rights defenders and for any movement to grow.
Thanks. So we are running short on time. I want to ask one last question. Oh, sorry, Trian, did you want to jump in here? Yeah, go ahead.
I know one of the things that I'm working on with Affinity is the Homeless Youth Summit that's going to be happening relatively soon, and one of the things that we hope to come out of it potentially is like a homeless youth app, and with this app, potentially to have small sections that here's where you can get healthcare, here's where you can get find jobs, here's where you can find hormones, or there's needle exchanges and different things like that, and hopefully being able to utilize that and gain information on person, and use that to know where youth are now, or where just people are in general as far as utilizing these resources, and hopefully to find other ways to better technology, better use technology.
Great.
I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, and that actually builds on sort of the next question, which is, what do Clare, you and Trian, you need from organizations like Amnesty? What can we do to elevate your voices and to help you create the change in your communities? And then, so if you could each give briefly your thoughts on that, probably 30 seconds, and then Andre also maybe 30 seconds about what strategies we can all use to implement what is needed from the community.
The overlying issue that I do want to put out there is Amnesty is big on solidarity, and that's exactly what we need back home. We do need to continue to feel like we're part of a bigger tribe of people that care about human rights, or LGBTI rights as human rights. So keep writing. There's a solidarity action called In Solidarity with Kuchus. We do receive these letters and we distribute them. I have 50 on my wall because they're very important for motivation. Keep the pressure up. keep pressuring the governments to recognize human rights for everyone. The pressure is important, it keeps us safe, it keeps government on their toes, it keeps government very, very accountable. For further details, please go to the Civil Society Coalition on Human Rights and Constitutional Law website, www.ugandansforrights.org. There are some guidelines on what can be done, whether you're a person or an organization. We do have guidelines on our website on what can be done, but keep the solidarity coming. Thank you.
I think that that Amnesty could do is probably just to keep to support other programs that are working on like different initiatives, like the homeless youth app that we were thinking of trying to create, and also just small organizations. I think like the Broadway Youth Center, who work to better the lives of people with various experiences. So I think if Amnesty can keep contact with organizations like that, I think that would help us.
I guess to Andre, what are your thoughts on how to best be in solidarity and how best to build coalitions?
Yeah, I think one thing is to think about looking at this broad range of issues and making sure that we're not only looking at moments of crisis, but also thinking about moments of opportunity as well, and also the things that happen right after the moments of crisis. And I think it's up to us, the people who are really the dedicated actors who want to be in this for the long haul, to make sure we're staying vigilant. And so solidarity doesn't mean that you're just there on the day when everything blows up. It means that you're there every day in between, thinking about what we're doing next to improve the situation. And with many of our partners, you may get an email from All Out one day a year about a campaign that we've been talking to them about for 3 years in development. So I think it's really important that when we're thinking about solidarity, we have that long-term vision, and that it's not all going to be sexy. A lot of it's just going to be work. I think the other thing that strikes me as being really important in this moment in the United States is that I think that U.S. corporations are going to play a really important role going forward in how how LGBT rights either continues to spread or not spread in the rest of the world. And I think there's a really tremendous opportunity for big companies in the US who we've already convinced in many ways to stand up on the right side of this issue for people in the US to also do the same for their employees and for communities where they are around the world. So a company like Coca-Cola that has outposts all over the world, 100% on the HRC Equality Index, but what happens when they are doing work in Russia? Do they have the same rules? Do their employees have the same non-discrimination policy? And I think there's actually, we've been having some conversations with executives in those companies, and I think there's a huge willingness to sort of understand how corporations can be positive actors on this and what the right role is for them. So I think that for all of us who use these big brands and who feel connected to them, they need to hear from us and hear how we feel about these issues and the role they should play.
Great. So this very last question is, what can all of us here today, what is one specific thing we can all do when we go home? And I'm going to answer that question because it relates to what AIUSA is doing right now on LGBT rights. And so you can go home and have an in-district meeting with your representatives from the House. On all your chairs, there is a card that has a link to AIUSA's Pride Kit. And so if you go to the link, you can access the Pride Kit online. And so the Pride Kit is sort of more generally about groups and AIUSA activists organizing Amnesty events at Prides. And then there's actions in there on, and of course, Prides at Risk in Belgrade and Kiev. But just to focus in on the ENDA piece, just a little bit of background, and then we're going to actually do an action on ENDA. As a lot of us probably know, employment discrimination on the basis of gender identity is still legal in 33 states here in the U.S. For sexual orientation, you can be fired for being LGBT in 29 states. And what's sort of so shocking about this is that it's entirely out of step with public opinion in the U.S. on whether or not people should be fired for their identity. And so very clearly the majority of Americans, polling tells us, support ENDA. The majority of Republicans support ENDA. The vast majority of Democrats support ENDA, and the Tea Party is split. And so there is pretty consistent support, but that has not translated into passage of ENDA, which we've been talking about since 1994. And it was only in 2007 that we finally had gender identity protections included for the first time. And so it wasn't really until last year when it went through the Senate that it was like we really have an opportunity here to finally get these very basic workplace protections in place. And so what we have to do right now is go back to our communities and have these in-district meetings with our members of Congress and get additional co-sponsors, get additional, particularly Republicans, to co-sponsor ENDA, and then to push the leadership of the House to move to a floor vote. So when you leave today, there are going to be folks outside with clipboards, I believe, who are going to be asking you to sign up for that in-district meeting. And then AIUSA and the LGBT Human Rights Coordination Group will be in touch with you about giving tools and strategies, talking points for how to have those meetings. We're asking for these meetings as part of AIUSA's spring lobby efforts. And so we'll be working with LCs. You absolutely, all of us here have the resource of the LCs, which absolutely should be using. And I just want to point out some of the LCs we have in the room as resource people, because for those of you that sign up to have an in-district meeting with your members of Congress, you can certainly reach out to any member of our legislative coordinators. You can reach out to any of our legislative coordinators for support or guidance. And so if we could just, if our LCs, our legislative coordinators in the room could raise their hand, I have a list of some names: Becky Farrar, Bob Pearson, Leanne Smith, Josh Cooper, Pam Ekgami, Kevin Ellison, Julie Sheffling, Missy Hayward. Can we show of hands? So these folks are legislative coordinators, and they can assist you in setting up these meetings and sort of give you some background on what to expect. As a closing thought, I would really want to thank a couple people who really made this plenary happen. Christina Finch, Julia Drost, and Missy Hayward, who are really integral in getting this together. So many thanks to them. And now, if we could go to the last slide.